Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Whitney Kosters, professor of English, and I post free literary analyses and lectures on writing, research, and rhetoric here on my YouTube channel. And today we are going to examine Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. This is a story that is remembered for its final scene, but really its lasting power comes from something much deeper. The realization that the villagers who killed Tessie Hutchinson are not villains. They are ordinary people, familiar, recognizable, disturbingly close to us. Jackson's brilliance lies in how she exposes the quiet mechanisms through which communities accept harmful traditions simply because they have never learned how not to. Before diving into the story itself, it's worth considering how human beings relate to tradition. Now, most people participate in rituals whose origins they don't really know. Families repeat holiday customs inherited from grandparents. Communities reenact ceremonies whose meanings have blurred into nostalgia. In November, in particular, a month saturated with ritualized gathering, inherited narratives, and half remembered history, many households perform traditions by instinct rather than intention. And it's during this season, when repetition feels natural and unquestioned, that the lottery is often taught, because the story presses on the uneasy truth that tradition can become a moral anesthetic. This inability to distinguish longevity from legitimacy is Jackson's target. The lottery is not about sadistic aberrations. It's about what happens when violence becomes habitual, when repetition becomes righteousness. Jackson constructs her critique through meticulously chosen details: the settings, the objects, the names, and the ritual itself. The opening lines establish the most disarming atmosphere possible. June 27th, a warm, bright summer morning. The grass is green, the flowers are blooming. Jackson deliberately overturns horror conventions. No darkness, storms, or ominous shadows. Horror here does not emerge from the environment, but from the community's unquestioned normalcy. The violence ahead is not hidden. It happens in full sun because the villagers no longer see it as violence at all. The children gather first, and Jackson tells us the feeling of liberty sat uneasily on most of them. On the surface, it's because school has just ended, but symbolically, it signals something deeper. Their liberty is already constrained by the rituals they are expected to absorb. Their first act, gathering stones, is an initiation. They choose them with enthusiasm, not dread. The meaning of the stones will reveal itself later, but their casual collecting foreshadows how tradition conditions even the youngest members of a community. The stones themselves are one of the clearest symbols in the story. A stoning is communal violence. No single rock is responsible for death. Responsibility disperses across the group. The symbol of the stone is the symbol of the small individual act that by itself feels insignificant, but collectively becomes lethal. This diffusion of responsibility is essential to Jackson's critique. No villager needs to see themselves as the killer because everyone participates together. And then there's the black box, the centerpiece of the ritual. Now, Jackson emphasizes its age, its shabbiness, its patched surface. It is literally falling apart, yet no one will replace it. The box symbolizes tradition itself, decayed, irrational, yet fiercely protected simply because it's old. The villagers talk about building a new one but never act on it. The ritual's physical container mirrors the ritual's conceptual one, worn out, empty of meaning, yet unquestioned. The slips of paper further underscore the erosion of original purpose. The story notes that the lottery once used wood chips, a material tied to the agriculture and mythical roots of sacrifice. Paper is more bureaucratic, more modern. The ritual persists, but its religious or agrarian explanation has vanished, and what remains is procedure without meaning, violence without justification, the pure momentum of habit. The black box rests on a three-legged stool, another symbolic detail. A tripod is stable. It suggests that the ritual rests on multiple supports. Critics have read these legs as representing tradition, authority, and conformity, or past, present, and future, or community, state, and fear. The exact trio is less important than the idea that no ritual of this scale survives without being held up by several reinforcing structures. Jackson is equally deliberate with the names. Mr. Summers, who conducts the lottery, carries associations of warmth and growth. He organizes civic events, linking communal joy with communal violence. Mr. Graves, assisting him, represents death. And together, these two embody the seamless coexistence of celebration and destruction. Old Man Warner defends the lottery with the zeal of someone for whom age alone proves validity. His name contains a warning, but he warns not against violence, only against abandoning tradition. Mrs. Delacroix's name evokes the cross, symbols of sacrifice and redemption, yet she eagerly selects a large stone. The sacred and the savage coexist comfortably in her hands. And Tess Hutchinson, whose last name echoes the historical dissenter Anne Hutchinson, becomes the village's scapegoat, not because she resists the ritual, but because she participates fully until she becomes its target. Jackson refuses to make her a saint. Tessie's awakening comes only when self-preservation demands it. The uncomfortable truth heightens the story's critique. Moral clarity that arrives only under personal threat is too fragile to challenge collective wrongdoing. The ritual structure reveals additional layers. Men draw for their families, reinforcing patriarchal norms. Women and children stand behind them, both protected and complicit. The ritual unfolds with bureaucratic order, lists, rules, procedures. The violence is not chaotic, it's administrative. This is one of the story's most dystopian elements, a tradition so formalized that no individual feels responsible for the outcome. Jackson anticipates the logic of many modern dystopians where systems commit harm efficiently while individuals tell themselves they are simply following protocol. When the Hutchinson family draws the marked slip, the village shifts almost imperceptibly. Tessie protests, but the ritual doesn't pause. Her claims of unfairness are met with procedural correction, not moral listening. Once the ritual identifies its victim, the community moves with practiced confidence. Even little Davy is given pebbles to throw. This image, the child becoming a participant in his mother's death, is not merely shocking. It is symbolic of how traditions perpetuate themselves. A new generation learns not meaning, but movement. Tessie's final cries, "It isn't fair, it isn't right," are true, but they arrive within a system that has no mechanism for fairness. A ritual that survives through collective agreement cannot be undone by individual insight. And that is Jackson's point. Injustice woven into communal identity remains invisible to those who inherit it unless the entire community chooses to confront it. What then is the story ultimately saying? That tradition, when left unexamined, can distort a community's moral vision? That ordinary people can participate in cruelty without malice simply because the cruelty is wrapped in ritual? That rituals, from harmless holiday customs to dangerous cultural habits, retain power long after their origins disappear? And that people often prefer the comfort of repetition to the discomfort of questioning? What do you think? This is why the lottery remains relevant. While few communities reenact violence as literally as Jackson's villagers, many reenact rituals that are cultural, political, or familial, whose origins they have forgotten and whose consequences they haven't fully considered. People inherit patterns of behavior and belief because they feel natural. Tradition becomes a shield from self-examination. The story's final question is not, how could they do this, but where do we do this? Where do we accept procedures, customs, or narratives simply because they have always existed? Where do we confuse familiarity with morality? Where do we allow tradition to stand in for thought? Share your ideas and thoughts in the comments section below. After all, the lottery endures because it forces readers to recognize ourselves in the villagers. Jackson's narrative leaves no comforting distance. The stones fall quickly, the story ends abruptly, and the silence that follows becomes the reader's responsibility. In that silence, the story presses one enduring question. Which of our own traditions requires scrutiny before they become the next lottery? If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing and be sure to check out some of my other videos with more help on writing, research, literature, and more. And if you happen to be teaching this story in your AP Lit class or you're taking the AP Lit exam soon, please know that I have an entire teaching guide and study guide on how to ace this story and more on the AP Lit exam. Be well.